My name is Percy Jackson. Getting in trouble is like breathing for me.
The hit series returns to Disney Plus and Hulu.
The danger the camp is under is greater than you can possibly imagine.
For the key to our survival, 3 of you must quest to the Sea of Monsters.
Let's go do the impossible.
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. New season 2-episode premiere December 10th on Disney Plus and Hulu. Learn more at disneyplus.com/what's-on.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Three, two, one. Welcome to another Britflix podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today's guest is Jonathan Sadler, author of Film Marketing and Distribution, an Independent Filmmaker's Guide. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, after we've discussed the book, we will then go on to 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Does that sound like what you signed up for?
It is, exactly.
Superb. Well, look, let us start at the beginning then. You're someone with a wealth of experience working in film marketing and distribution and the like. What inspired you to sort of try and bring that together into a guidebook for filmmakers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was working with, distributors, big, small, started out at Universal Pictures in '98.
Right.
That was my my sort of entry into film marketing. I'd been a film buyer before that in retail.
Okay.
So I used to buy what used to be called sell-through video for a couple of chains, Music and Video Club being probably the most recent one.
Right.
And so I came over into marketing in '98, and then I kind of quickly moved into independent distribution. I went to Momentum Pictures in 2001 when they were kind of starting out, working on some amazing films. That was all in the home entertainment sector at that point.
Yeah.
And then I flipped over it. I really wanted to get into theatrical marketing in a big way. And I did that eventually. I moved into Revolver Entertainment around 2010.
Got you.
And then I worked there, and I was there for a couple of years, and I did about 6.5 years at Arrow Films. And all that time, you're meeting independent producers, filmmakers, other distributors. And I kind of realized, because in the studio system, they kind of like make a film based on forecasts and market demand and that kind of thing. But independent filmmakers just make a movie, and then they hope to try and slot it into the market. So it's kind of this weird disconnect occurs, between supply and demand, and supply and, I guess, what you call critical path, or the film value chain, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And filmmakers don't tend to know anything beyond what happens about. They want to make a movie, and it's in independent filmmaking. It tends to be sort of just this desire to tell a story or make a film. That seems to be the be all and end all. And then they try and slot the movie into the market like a kind of square peg in a round hole, and kind of wonder why it hasn't succeeded. And we all know that most independent films don't succeed or make money or find the audience that they were intended to find.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was digesting all that through that period of time working with filmmakers, realizing also that, as a marketeer, I wasn't being given assets, things that would make my job easy to market independent film. I realized that producers weren't considering whether they should give me stills that I could make a decent poster out of and things like that, really basic stuff. So that kind of went through my head. And then I went freelance in 2018. Arrow Films kind of shut down their sort of theatrical division, and a few people went at that time, and I was one of them. And I was I was a free agent, I guess, for the first time in my career.
Yeah.
And as a free agent, you can say what you want and what you think publicly. You can't really do that when you're kind of part of a team and part of a company, because you have to kind of toe the company line, and you can't say things publicly that might sort of, reflect badly on the company. And so I started sort of doing blogging, and I've always been a bit of an amateur writer.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd test the waters. So I did some blogs on LinkedIn initially about my experiences working some of these companies. So I did a series of blogs, like what I learned from working at Momentum, what I learned from working at Universal, and then I did one at Revolver. And they seemed to go down really well. I was getting good feedback from them. And then I thought, well, maybe I could turn my blogging into something a little more educational. So I started doing a few series of blogs. I did one about a promotional shopping list for filmmakers, things that they should basically compile while they're making a movie, so that marketers down the line can market their movie more effectively.
Got you.
Then I did a blog about key art or poster design, and I did one about casting and how casting decisions can impact the marketing or success of a movie beyond just finding the right actor for the role. And then I did one also on choosing titles for movies and how important that is, which is another thing that doesn't really get considered from a technical point of view, in terms of like search engine optimization and things like that. Down the line, you, as an example of that, you might choose a title where if you go on IMDb, there's 7 other movies with exactly the same title. So immediately you've got discoverability issues. You might need to like work out, well, what year was the film I'm looking for called Destroyed. And so you kind of do a bit of detective work, or you might just find a really generic word like a film called Here, which if you then type that into Google, I want to see Here, you're going to have a really, really tough time kind of finding that movie.
It's a funny quote from Damon Spanley about that, isn't it? In your book.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So we talked about that specifically. And I mean, that's a good example, again, because he's talking about one of the films that he worked on. So, he's been quite candid there. So there's that. And then I thought, I'm going to get some pushback. People are going to like start saying, hang about a minute, we're talking about all that sort of imposter syndrome coming in. And then, but people were really positive about it. So then I thought, well, maybe I could like put all this together as a book, I quite fancy the idea of writing a book. And I was at a period of time in my life when I saw a little window of opportunity that I could put some time aside where I'm not really earning while I'm doing it, which is, always a difficult thing to do. I think it's a barrier for a lot of people, isn't it, creatively, because you just constantly have to churn that money coming in. So
of course, I
thought, well, I'll put a bit of time aside and I'll put my freelance work on hold, and I'm just going to do this book. And then I got a filmmaker friend of mine, J.K. Amalu. He recommended Lucy Hay, who's a writer, and she'd written some books for Creative Essentials range via Camera Books with a K. So I got in touch with them, and I realized I was speaking to Hannah Patterson, and I realized I knew her already because she was a partner of Ian Hayden Smith, who I used to do Q&As with. And so small world, 6 degrees of separation.
Indeed.
And they were kind of up for it. And I think because most of the Creative Essentials books are like how to write female characters, or how to format a screenplay, and there wasn't a lot, or if anything, to do with what happens after you've made. So they were up for it, and I went away and sort of started planning the book, and that was the inspiration behind it. That's quite a long answer.
What sort of techniques and strategies do you adopt now versus what you would have done in 2001? How has that changed for the better or worse?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, you get a lot more information now than you used to, which is a good and bad thing. Because in the old days, you buy your print media, you get your posters out on the underground, and you'd get your big billboards out, your bus shelters and your press ads. But you wouldn't have a clue what they were doing. You just kind of put it out there, and the film either worked or it didn't.
Yeah.
And you could then put that down to anything you like. And that's one of the things that I dislike about film marketing, is that it's very difficult to pin success on one thing or another, because it's entirely nebulous, because everything just gets thrown together in this sort of mix.
Yeah.
But what you learned with the advent of social and digital advertising online is that you knew exactly who was seeing it, how many times, for how long they were seeing it, and how many times people were clicking through to buy a ticket or buy a copy of something.
Yeah.
And then you'd kind of like, you'd be in a situation then where you'd realize that how, in a way, how ineffective that can be and how costly it is per acquisition.
Yeah.
So you kind of get into a situation where with independent film, and a lot of independent distributors now are kind of going away from sort of spending money on advertising because they realize that it's just not really cost effective to spend £10, per customer to acquire a ticket or to get a DVD sale. So yeah, you kind of the curtain opened and you could get to see behind it for the first time.
Yeah.
But then you kind of realize that actually my advertising is not really paying off. So I should be doing something else instead. So yeah, so it could be, you could be like really excited about a Facebook campaign, think, oh, I've had sort of 1 million trailer views and so many people are liking and sharing. And I had this situation with I remember when I was at Arrow Films, I was doing a campaign for the film The Voices with Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
We were getting incredible engagement, and the media company would be on the line going, "Oh, this is the best engagement I've ever seen for a Facebook, ad." And then on opening weekend, like nobody turns up, and you think, well, have we just like entertained a load of people on Facebook, enjoying my clip, but have I actually monetized that? Has that actually converted? So it could be quite depressing in a way, because back in the day when you booked your ads and you get signed off by your marketing director or whatever, and the finance director would sign it off, and the film would live or die, and then would you move on to the next one? But then the more data you have, the more you can realize whether something's actually being efficient and effective. And a lot of the time it's actually more expensive than you realize. And if you're trying to just sell something on an opening weekend, it's not like a brand where it's like baked beans where you're selling it week in, week out. You've got one opportunity to make that work. And I guess you always have this issue where you kind of think, well, I've got to advertise it, no one's going to know about it. But if it's going to cost me more to get someone to buy a ticket through advertising it than I'm getting back for the ticket, then it kind of it's a very sort of head scratching industry in that sense, and film marketing can be very frustrating in that sense.
Okay.
Because you think, well, what am I going to do? How can I, if there's a limited amount of money this film can make, and there's a limited amount of money I can spend on it, what's the best use of that money? What's the best way of doing that? And that's when I think it comes down to things like doing a lot of trade marketing. So like working with cinemas, making sure people that go to those cinemas regularly are seeing your poster. They're seeing the synopsis of the film in the program. You're advertising on their website where people are buying tickets. So it's kind of like, I kind of like it to fishing where the fish are. So kind of really getting sort of technical in terms of, who is the audience, or where are the audience going to make their decisions about what films they're going to go and see or buy. And it's kind of getting down to that sort of granular level. And PR, I think, is the best way of investing any money you do have, and trade marketing. But doing stuff like, broader advertising, Facebook ads and the like. As I say, the more information you have, the more you know whether it's working or not.
Given this is 3 films that impacted everything adult life, what would you say are 3 key elements that you'd like someone to take away having read your book? What would be 3 key things that you would hope someone would take away from your book?
The main thing is with the industry, as I said at the very beginning, is this sort of disconnect between sort of supplier and distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So in most industries, the supplier and distributor are very aligned. So the supplier knows exactly what is required for the market. So I use this analogy of, say, automobiles. So for example, if you were going to make a new mid-range SUV car for the market, like say it's a Toyota or something like that, then you've got to make that car so that it can sell for around 45 grand. But if you then make that car so that the cost of the vehicle means in order to make a profit, you've got to sell it for £65,000, it's not gonna be in the market range anymore, so it's not gonna work. So most films, this is something that I was chatting to Dave Bishop at Protagonist about, is that most films are made too expensive now to work in the market in order to make their money back.
Okay.
I mean, I saw a LinkedIn post the other day about someone was saying that someone was trying to sell a Gerard Butler film, and the budget of the movie was 78 million. And you're thinking, well, the budget for a Gerard Butler film needs to be around 25 million if it's going to work and make money for people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this disconnect between people making really expensive films with certain actors in it, but there's no way that those films, no matter how they turn out, in terms of how they slot into the market, can make that kind of level of money back. So that's one of the biggest things, I think, is knowing how much budget to put behind a movie in terms of what it can achieve in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of filmmakers have absolutely no idea about that whatsoever. And the other key thing, I guess, is about the thing about this book, and is slightly different, I think, to a lot of film marketing books and what people think about film marketing, is that people think film marketing is about posters and trailers and ads and PR. And it is to a point, but film marketing, I think, is a bit like what I would call like product development in other industries. So if you're going to bring a new product to a market in any other industry, you do like a lot of audience research. You kind of research the market. You understand critical paths. You understand consumer demand. You might do focus groups. You might test packaging. But whereas people make a film, but they don't really think about any of those things at all up front. And then they kind of bring their finished product to the market and they say, well, why can't I get distribution for it? Why is a distributor not buying it? So if you could think about all those things at the beginning of the process and think of it from using marketing techniques and marketing thinking, you can think, well, I've got to pick a title that is discoverable online, something that I can get search engine optimization out of. So the example of a film called Here is impossible for search engine optimization. So you'd have to write, Zemeckis here or the actors. But if you've got a film, called 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and you type that in, you're going to hit that first time. So
yeah.
So there's a lot of things to think about, and also, has this title been used before? So just thinking about it and I know that there's a big debate, and a lot of people hate the idea of thinking about film as a product or content. But if it wants to fit into the mechanism of an industry and a marketplace, then it is content and it is a product. If you just want to make a film and show it to your friends, then that's different. And there was another LinkedIn post I saw recently from a filmmaker saying, "Stop telling us to make films to make money. We're making art. It's got nothing to do with money." And I'm thinking, well, that's fine if that's your own money going into it. But if you've asked an investor to put their money in it, you have a responsibility to give them a return on investment. So thinking about the level of budget, the title, compiling assets for marketing people like myself, so they can use those effectively in creating a poster and a trailer, and things like EPKs, behind the scenes footage, all the things that can become social content. Those are the things that filmmakers really need to think about if they want to be successful and they want to find an audience for their film. And I guess the one thing that everyone said who I interviewed in the book, because I've got a lot of contributors, was know your audience or know who your audience is at the very beginning. And that's not just knowing your audience, it's kind of really thinking about who your audience is, and not just who your audience is, but how your audience consumes film and where they go to consume film. And then trying to engineer those things so that when you do bring a film to market, you spent it the right amount of money so the film can make money back for the various distributors and sales agents down the line. And you've cast it appropriately and all those things that really need a lot of consideration, a lot of thinking. And I think that using marketing thinking and techniques right at the very, very beginning is really, really key. And there's a lot in the book about that. And I said earlier, this is a book because all the other books in the range are about filmmaking and this is what you do after you make a film. But really, it's best if you read this book before you make a film, so that then you can think about these things through that whole process.
Yeah, because I did write it down actually. I wrote, you're developing a film idea, you're making a movie, you're in post-production, you're ready to screen, you've a slot at a film festival, you're available on a streamer, you're booked into theatres. When should you begin your marketing process? And from what you're saying, from the inception, really, isn't it? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the most successful independent release I ever worked on was at Revolver Entertainment. It was Anotherhood, the urban comedy that Adam Deacon wrote, and he did a sequel for Paramount a couple of years ago. And I joined at the very beginning of that sort of project, and the marketing and distribution teams and the production teams were completely aligned because they were under the same umbrella of the company. There was Gunslinger Films and Revolver; they were like sister companies.
Yeah.
So everything about how that film was ultimately released had a marketing angle, and it was a very marketing-led company. And so we were putting like YouTube channels together before anyone did think something like that for a movie. We shot a music video, while the film was being made, that went out on YouTube, and it became a single. All the cast were at the time, in terms of social media, BlackBerry messaging was a really big thing. So all the cast was sort of messaging about the movie while they were making the film. Twitter really kind of was taking off big time around 2011. And all the cast were getting on Twitter, on their own Twitter accounts and promoting the film. So engaging the cast in the marketing process itself was quite new. Facebook was also relatively new in terms of, doing film promotion at the time. And we really smashed it on all those fronts. And we made merch. The whole thing was from start to finish, but none of that marketing started after the movie was over. It was all throughout so by the time the film came out of the gate, it hit the ground running completely because it had like 12 months of marketing already happening. Whereas a lot of films, so say a distributor buys a movie at a market, and then they might say, right, 3 or 4 weeks before the release, let's drop a trailer, and then let's just buy some London Underground, or some radio advertising and put it out there, and then maybe consumers have got 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get to know that movie. Whereas our audience for Anotherhood knew that film for months and months and were anticipating it. And it ended up doing 2.2 million box office, which is a phenomenal result for a film that cost about 700,000 to produce. So I kind of learned a lot in that process, and it was a really great learning ground for marketeers. And I think that a lot of people remember Revolver being like really, really clever at marketing, and so it was kind of like a real privilege, I guess, to go and work there and be the head of marketing in that period. But at the same time, it was the most stressful job I've ever had because just the pressure was on all the time because there wasn't a lot of money to spend. So you were constantly having to sort of think about what can I do? What stunt can I do to make this film hit the headlines? They were famous for doing the Labour government, in the Kid Hot Hood poster they just bought one billboard and that became the story. Okay. So all that kind of thinking, like I was saying before, is like straight advertising is really expensive for independent movies. It's not a good return on investment. So you've got to kind of come up with lots of grassroots ideas and other ways of making a noise, really. But we could talk for hours and hours about the contents of the book in that respect. But, the one takeaway is that marketing isn't something you do right when it's all over, when you hand it over to the distributor or the sales agent. It's really, you can integrate all those things from day one, and like setting up, social media accounts for the film, loading content while you're making the film, behind the scenes videos, getting the cast to blog about it, all those things, that's really integral. And a friend of mine, Joseph Milson, he's got a film out at the moment through Bulldog, Signs of Life, and he's a really good example of someone that's done all of that from day one. Yeah, and he's done screenings of that film, which is such a small independent film, very low budget, and they've been packed because he's really worked it. Worked with the cinemas that are playing that film. Yeah, kind of go down there, get to meet them, talk to the people, who are doing the ticket sales, and you just got to think of everything and anything you can do to put everything behind the film, and then it's got a chance of succeeding. So yeah, that's kind of really the crux of it, I think.
In what way did the book shift your understanding of marketing and distribution, or what new ideas emerged for you from writing the book that maybe you wouldn't have come to if you hadn't pulled the book together?
Yeah, I think it kind of cemented a few things I hadn't really necessarily completely understood, when I started, because, it's interesting when you speak to a lot of people in the industry and they all say the same thing. That's really revealing. So as I said, everyone was saying, who's the film for? That's me to, and then the producers say, I don't really know. The film's for everyone, really. And you there's that mantra: is if it's for everyone, it's for nobody.
Yeah.
So it's all this thing you've got to pick. You've got to pick an audience. You've got to choose, and you can have 3 different audiences. You can have your primary, your secondary, and your tertiary audience, and you can segment it like that if you've got enough budget in order to sort of split your budget. But yeah, everyone said that, and that was really interesting. So that really hammered home that kind of idea of that's where it all starts, is knowing who this is for and making sure that you're picking the right audience. And then there was this whole thing, as I was saying, about the technical side of films being budgeted correctly so that they can make money. And that's the problem, is just so many films just can't make their money back because they're just too expensive. So people are maybe, spending too much money on cast. And the whole casting thing, you might think, why is there a chapter on casting in a book about film marketing? What's that got to do with marketing? And I think it's got a lot to do with marketing, really, because like I was saying earlier, with another good example is if you're casting film with people that are prepared to talk about the film, so you publicly, then that's really going to do a lot of heavy lifting for you down the line.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember working on one film where the lead actress refused to put it on her social media at all. It's just, no, my Instagram account's personal. I'm not going to talk about the film my person. I'm thinking, my God, this is your career. Do you not want
Jonathan,
the film to succeed?
You're speaking my language. This is one of the most infuriating things I've discovered about covering film, never mind making them. I cannot believe the amount of people that are linked to a film that don't help promote it. It's been amazing to me.
Yeah, staggering to me. I mean, I got so many stories. I remember once I was working, I won't say who the distributor was or who the actress was, but the actress was kind of really big A-list star, but she did an independent movie, but she produced it as well. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. She wanted to come to the UK to promote the film. She was from America. And I was kind of shitting myself at that point, because I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to afford to bring her over? And then I thought, well, she's the producer of the film, so she's going to want to kind of just do this on the cheap, because when actors do independent movies, they don't get the big trailer, they don't get the entourage, and they have to muck in, they put their welly boots on and go and sit in the caravan, like everyone else. A lot of independent actors want to do those kind of movies because they don't want to constantly be in Lycra doing superhero movies, and they want to do some meaningful work with good dialogue, and they want to stretch themselves. And for that, they're prepared to kind of get muddy and cold and drink a cup of tea with the crew and all that. And then, but when it comes to the promoting of those films, they suddenly want the red carpet and the glitz and the 5-star hotel. I'm thinking, well, hang about, surely there's a disconnect here, And I was thinking, well, if you want to bring your own hairdresser and your own makeup artist, and they all want to fly first class, how the hell are we going to afford that on this independent film? It's just not going to happen. And then you kind of have these really awkward conversations. But again, you're like, just think about it for a minute. How can we possibly afford that on a film that costs like, 1.5 million to make? And it's just, so it's phenomenal, really. But I think that there's a bit of a rot in the industry because actors and directors get treated so well now that nobody is prepared to say no to them, and the demands are just getting bigger and bigger all the time. And as an independent marketer, that used to really frustrate me, because I'm thinking, I really want to spend my money on getting people to see this film rather than bringing your hairdresser over on first class, when there's perfectly good hairdressers here, but that kind of level of stuff just got silly, I think. And that would really annoy me, because I'm just thinking this is not doing anyone any favors. It's not serving the film.
Yeah.
And I think, I've always been, as a marketeer working in independent, I've always been really filmmaker friendly. I've always really wanted to help the filmmaker, because I know how hard it is to get a film made.
Yeah.
People put their people sometimes put their homes on the at risk,
They
making a movie.
They do, yeah.
It's blood, sweat, and tears. And then you get some ambivalent distributor coming along going, oh, yeah, well, we decided to put your film straight to digital because, we've got too many other films on our slate at the moment. And I always feel really painful about doing that because I don't know whether it's a weakness on my part that I just want to be liked or don't want to say no to people, but I would genuinely want to help the filmmaker and go out of my way to help them make the film a success. But sometimes your hamstrings because you're told you can only spend so much money, and so then you're kind of trying to make it work in other ways. But yeah, it's difficult. It's a tricky industry, and everyone needs to sort of help each other. So hopefully this book will help people make less mistakes. I think that's the key to it early on, and not be in a frustrated situation where they've put their house on the line and sweat blood for 3 years just to see their film sort of trickle away. And that happens an awful lot. I've worked with one filmmaker who made like 3 movies, and I don't think any one of his films has been played in a cinema once.
Right.
Because they all went straight to digital or straight to a streamer, and they never played a festival. He never had the joy of being invited to tour his film around the world at festivals, which is the joy of being a filmmaker. That's part of why you do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the choices you make, the distributor you choose to go with, the festival you decide to play with, the sales agent you pick. A lot of people just jump at the first opportunity, and then they realize that they've lost control of their film, and if they're going to want to have to do that, they're going to have to make another film and make different choices the next time.
Absolutely.
So it can be brutal.
Well, look,
there's a lot of naivety and a lot of lack of understanding, and I think that hopefully the book clears that up. But it's not a jargon-filmed tome. It's not an academic book. It's very approachable. There's a lot of interviews with really great people in it. It's not just my ideas and my thoughts on the industry. I didn't want it to be that. So yeah, hopefully it's the most up-to-date book of its kind.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on the book. Film Marketing and Distribution, Independent Filmmaker's Guide is out now from Creative Essentials. Now we shall move seamlessly into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. You have given me 3 titles for which we will discuss in the order you gave them me. But we will only talk for 5 minutes. And every time we hear this sound, we will stop and move on to the next film. Does that sound like what you signed up for?
It does.
For your first choice, we have got Jason and the Argonauts, directed by Don Schaefer, but best known and thought of affectionately for decades later as Ray Harryhausen's movie for special effects. For example, it took Ray 4 months to produce the skeleton fight scene, which runs for about 3 minutes, if that, in the movie. In 1992, at the Oscars Science and Technical Ceremony, Harryhausen received an award for his contributions to the film industry. Guest host Tom Hanks said, "Some people say Citizen Kane or Casablanca. I say Jason and the Argonauts is the greatest movie ever made." So, Jonathan, why is this one have such fond memories for you, or why does it have such an impact on you?
Well, I took your brief really seriously. I wanted to do films that impact me as sort of a young person in my early life. I didn't want to I'm very sort of fastidious about giving a task, So I thought, well, what was the one film that really I remember first falling in love with as a kid? And I was a sort of hyperactive child, so I was kind of mostly outside running around like a headless chicken. I didn't sit down for long. My nickname was Russian Touch, and so I kind of first time I remember sort of being interested enough in something to sit down was watching Jason and the Argonauts on TV, and probably on a little square box, at home, with those adverts. But I was just completely transfixed by it. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, the special effects still stand up to this day. I mean, I just rewatched the skeleton scene on YouTube just before this video, and it just to have another look at it. Because to be honest, I haven't watched the film for a while. It's not like I'm kind of obsessed by it, but I just remember just thinking this just completely grabbed my attention, for the first time. And, it was probably the first time that I got interested in the Greek myths, Greek mythology, and the whole, and I've had a lifelong passion for Greece that sort of evolved through various books and films over the years. And now it's just like, it's either the one place I would go anytime I had an opportunity would be Greece. And, I've just written my first novel that's set in Greece, actually. And so and that's got a lot of Greek mythology in it. And I think this probably just goes back to Jason and the Argonauts, what inspired me. And one of the other reasons I picked this film is that when I was at Arrow Films, I can't remember the exact year it was, but we released the documentary Ray Harryhausen's Special Effects Titan.
Okay.
So, which was a real kind of like one of those goosebump moments you get occasionally when you in life, where something comes back from your childhood or your kind of distant past, and you kind of have a brush with it. I had similar experience like doing a film with Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, where you become a fan and you get to have a pint with him. So this was my kind of opportunity of having that sort of full cycle. So obviously I got to meet Ray Harryhausen. This is before he died. It's like a year or so before he died, maybe 18 months. And I went to his house in Holland Park, massive house, beautiful, not far from where Jimmy Page lives, opposite where Harold and Pressburger lived, I think, as well. It's
wow.
Kind of like, there's a real kind of, square sort of meter of success and brilliance. And, so in his house, he's taking me around the house and showing me the models of the skeletons and, Talos and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like mind-blowing out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
So I kind of picked it for that reason as well, I think, because it did have an effect on my adult life professionally as well. We did a Q&A with Ray at the Gate Cinema in Notting Hill.
Amazing.
Which was just a phenomenal privilege. I've done a lot of great things in my career, but that's got to be up there. One of the most, the things one of my fondest memories. He was very frail and, getting in a taxi with him, and it's just kind of like pinch yourself stuff, really. But the film itself is just wonderful. It's just proper boys' own adventure stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
With statues coming to life, fighting skeletons, and I mean, what more could you want out of a film?
No, absolutely no. And I think as well, it's that wonderful thing about that period of time when you would catch something on TV, because it's like a film on TV was an event. I mean, now we can there's thousands of films at our fingertips now when we want them and how much we want to watch of them. Whereas
that sense of discovery kind of has gone now, hasn't it? In that sense, because you don't really just come across something anymore. You select it yourself, so it's not served to you.
There's that first 5 minutes, sir. Well done.
Hey, that was pretty neat.
For your second choice, we're going to 1969 for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. George Lazenby's one-time outing as the infamous James Bond after Sean Connery dropped out when the studio refused to pay his 1.25 million fee, which blew my mind, thinking of 1.25 million for a fee in 1969. The producers originally intended to explain the change by saying he'd undergone plastic surgery, but decided to not refer to the change at all and thus hopefully minimise the public reaction. That said, in the opening action sequence, right before the title, Bond says, "This never happened to the other fella," an intentionally comic reference to the change. So tell us, how and why does this have such an impact on you, and what fond memories does it hold?
Well, it's obviously the greatest Bond movie ever made, for starters. I'm like a big...
I can see phones being thrown around now with that claim, but go on.
Well, I've always been a massive James Bond fan. I think, that was kind of coming out of childhood was another big thing movie-wise.
Yeah.
But this film, I guess when I was first aware of Bond movies, you're quite influenced by what your friends think as and I have friends, I say, "Oh, George Lazenby was rubbish," and I remember looking at him when he was James Bond, and I obviously had seen it, kind of earlier on in my life. And I remember thinking, well, he looks a bit sort of rubbery, and I'm not really sure about this Australian thing. And I didn't pay it that much attention. I think the first Bond film I remember seeing in the cinema was For Your Eyes Only, which I saw at the Odeon Marble Arch, that's the first time I can really remember seeing a Bond film in a movie. I think that was like 78 or something, was it? Maybe getting my dates wrong here. But anyway, so fast forward a bit. It's 1995, and it's New Year's Day, New Year's Day 96.
Okay.
So I'd been at a party the night before, and it was a black tie event, and I met this girl, Charlotte, and kind of got it on together on the dance floor. I did sort of like first kiss at midnight, that kind of thing. And then so the next day I'm kind of recovering with a hangover, sort of lying on the sofa at my mum and dad's house with a blanket over me, and On a Majesty Secret Service comes on, so I thought, fine, I'm going to settle in for the afternoon and watch this movie. And then this kind of film just blew me away. I'm thinking, like, God, I don't remember this film at all being like this, this sort of big romance thing. Obviously I had a bit of romance in my... So the girl I met the night before ended up being my wife, and we're still
amazing
today. So it's kind of like this... So I kind of like this moment really of just discovering On a Majesty Secret Service, with this sort of my heart pumping from meeting this girl the night before, I guess kind of put me in that romantic sort of mood of sort of Tracy, and then it's realizing what a quality movie it is and how great Diana Rigg was. Telly Savalas, you've got such great cast, and, Gabrielle Fazzetti, and, people say, oh, Lazenby wasn't a very good actor, but I think people forget or don't realize that all of the time when he's playing Sir Hilary Bray, he's dubbed.
Okay.
So that's probably why the acting looks a bit dodgy, because he's dubbed. It's not his voice. And that can make a huge difference to, the nuance of acting. So I think he gets a real bum ride with it. I think if you watch the film with a really open mind, knowing that from the beginning, actually it's a phenomenal performance. And Peter Hunt obviously was an editor beforehand, so I think he brought a really kinetic feel to the film. It's incredibly well edited and shot as, in that different way. And I think that really shows. And I think it's one of John Barry's best scores, if not his best score. Then you've got like the Louis Armstrong, We Have All the Time in the World. And it just gets the hairs on your back of your neck when that plays and they're kind of walking around a park. It's a very romantic scene. And then you have this tragedy at the end, where the immortal line, we have all the time in the world, and he realizes that they've got no time at all. And he can't accept it. And I think his acting there is just phenomenal, personally. I think it's a very rounded, it's one of the best Fleming books, I think, and it's a very, it's quite true to the book in a sense, whereas a lot of the other James Bond films that are taken the title from a Fleming book are very, very different. Like Spy Love Me is almost completely made up. It's nothing. It's just the title is the only thing that kind of ties it to that. So yeah, it's just this, that whole personal feeling of, being in that zone and then watching that movie, it just kind of blew me away. And I just thought, I'm absolutely in love with this. And I love the cars, the car chase. I love the skiing, the Alps, and all that kind of, the whole thing with Piz Gloria, the revolving restaurant.
There we go. There's our 5 minutes.
It's not even a set, it's a real place.
Yeah, no, it was, the hotel was a partly built hotel. And the deal was, you do your permanent set build and we'll have it for our hotel, kind of thing. It was, £125,000 was spent on the production of the set for essentially a hotel suite thing.
Amazing.
And the because of the skiing element, Lazenby had suggested a stunt which they couldn't afford to do, which then became, I think it's not For Your Eyes Only, which is the one that opens up with the skiing sequence.
Spy Love Me.
Spy Love Me. So that the jumping out in the skis off the plane and helicopter and parachuting was originally a George Lazenby idea. And I was fascinated because I never paid as much attention because of we were talking about it. And I was looking into why George Lazenby only did the one. And there's obviously reasons why, that they did a deal with Sean for the next film, so that's easily solved. But also, I didn't realize that the press went for him because they wouldn't have known that, Sean was asking for too much money or whatever. So it was like, how dare this man take Sean Connery's role kind of thing. And
I think being Australian didn't help.
Yes.
But then he grew a beard for the premiere, which kind of pissed off the producers. But it was the last film of 1969 that was released.
Oh, really?
So then it was 1970, and like he was saying that it was Easy Rider was coming in. It was all about long hair, and that whole 60 things was suddenly passé.
Yeah.
All that kind of looking sharp in the sort of like, he's got these kind of fluffy, thrilly,
Austin Powers sort of lampoons
Austin Powers sort of stuff. So suddenly it became like really, really, it's a bit like when the Bee Gees suddenly became unpopular after disco died, They come back in a big way, but for a period of time you can be really like unfashionable And he was advised not to do another Bond by a friend of his because he said, look, man, this is like uncool. Bond's dead. You know, 60s is gone. It's now all about hippies and, you know, and long hair and everything. So he was advised not to do it by a friend of his. That's his story anyway.
Indeed.
And I believe it, but I think it would have been great if he'd done more.
Right then. For your final choice, we're jumping forward into the 80s, 1988 to be precise, for Cinema Paradiso. The director, Giuseppe Tornatore's second feature film, ranked 26th best non-English speaking film in a critics poll run by the BBC. The film was shot in the director's hometown of Bagheria, Sicily, and draws a lot on his own childhood experiences for the story. His intention was that this movie should serve as an obituary for traditional movie theatres like the one in the film and the movie industry in general. But after the movie's success, he never mentioned this again. So for you, why did this film have such an impact on you? What are the fond memories associated with it?
Well, it's funny. I didn't really see the film when it first came out. I don't remember seeing it particularly. I was 20, I guess, when it came out. But I went to see it. It must have been about 93 to Tartan Video, or Tartan, the distributor, run by Hamish McAlpine. They had the rights to Cinema Paradiso at the time, and they put out the director's cut, which is this sort of 173-minute version.
Oh wow!
So the films had various different. There's a 124-minute version, which is the shortest version, a 155-minute version, and a 173-minute version. So I went to see the 173-minute version. So it's the first time I've seen the film, and it was at the. Do you remember the Metro Cinema on Rupert Street?
I don't know.
I think Tartan actually owned that cinema at the time.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is now. Probably like a kiosk or something. So I went to see it there, and it was about 1993, I think. And I went with a friend of mine, Richard. I was working at the time, and I remember literally just being sobbing through. And I don't cry very easily or very often. I just remember sobbing my eyes out of this film, and then obviously I saw the short version afterwards, and I'm thinking that's the one that most people would have seen.
Yeah, that's the one. I've not seen the 173.
Yeah, that's the popular version. And so obviously the stories about this. So he comes back for the funeral of the projectionist that he helped, and the projectionist Alfredo says, "Don't come back. Don't look back." You know, it's funny because it's a film about nostalgia that's sort of eschewing nostalgia at the beginning.
Yeah.
Nostalgia's bad. You know, you've got to get out of here. So he goes out and becomes a successful Hollywood producer, and so he finally comes back to Sicily for the funeral of the projectionist. And in the short version, that's what kind of happens. He comes back, and then this all plays in flashbacks when he's a little boy helping in the cinema, and how they used to cut out all the snogging from the films because, you know, they were Catholics and everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, so his job was to slice out all those kisses so that then the vicar would come in and approve the cut. So he'd be like the BBFC of Sicily, you know. So at the end of the movie, then Alfredo's left him a present, and it's a film canister full of all the kisses re-edited together. So when he gets back to Hollywood, he's in his a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it. Sorry about that. Is he plays the thing, and he's sort of sitting there sobbing because he's seeing all the great movie kisses, you know, from this wonderful era of cinema, and you can't have them more. And it's a sentimental film, but you can't have a bigger love letter to cinema than that film, and everything about, you know, the cinema itself as an experience, the theater, the projector, the smell of the seats, and the dust in the air when the projector's rolling, all those things that if you've grown up loving cinema in any way, you know, that you can't help but feel nostalgic about. But the thing about the director's cut is when he comes back to Sicily, there's this whole kind of like young romance, his first love in the movie. You know, as a teenage boy, he kind of falls in love for the first time with this. So when he comes back in the director's cut, he looks her up, and they go out again on a date.
Oh, really?
So you get this whole kind of like, it fills that whole kind of gap where I was thinking, you know, what would happen if you could like go back to your hometown and have a date with your first love, you know, and find out where they've been, what they've been up to. And I think everyone sort of thinks about that occasionally, don't they? What would it be like if I could meet that person that I first fell in love with, you know?
Yeah.
And what would you say now and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get all that. And I think that the film is so much richer because of it. But at the same time, it's like a 12-inch single or a hit single, isn't it? The hit single is good for radio, and it's plays for 3 minutes, and it's got a beginning, middle, and end. So this does stretch that kind of shape of the movie quite a lot. I think this kind of, it's almost like a coda, but I thought it was really emotionally resonant.
There we go. Perfect timing. Well, that brings us to the end of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Thank you for sharing that. I think you're my third guest to sort of share a film moment that's linked to meeting their life partner. I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing when there's kind of like that element that film can be wrapped up into our lives like that.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't mention is I got to work on Cinema Paradiso later in my career as well.
Okay.
So I did the 25th anniversary reissue in cinemas when I was at Arrow Films.
Oh, amazing.
So it also has a professional, aspect to it as well, in the same way that Jason and the Argonauts did, albeit a little bit more obliquely. So I did the 25th anniversary reissue, and we cut a new trailer for the film. And I think that's the best trailer that exists in the world for the movie, is the one that we cut. And I can't take much credit for it because I worked with Intermission Film on the trailer, and I think it was their first. I think we maybe made one edit or something to it, but they absolutely nailed that film. And I think if you watch the trailer, I think it's on YouTube. It's the first thing you come up when you put in Cinema Paradiso. The Arrow Academy trailer is absolutely brilliant trailer for that movie. So I recommend, if you haven't seen Cinema Paradiso, watch the trailer, and then you probably will want to. And
for the 25th anniversary, was that the 173-minute version that came out? Or
we put that. We put that out. I think on the Arrow Blu-ray, you can have the director's cut or the theatrical version.
Oh, okay.
So there's both of them. But yeah, we put the director's cut out in cinemas. I mean, I was completely adamant about that, because I think it's a point of difference because most people haven't seen that version.
Yeah, indeed.
But it did really well back in cinemas. I think we took about $80,000 as a reissue, and we put it out at Christmas. It's not a Christmas film, but I thought it had a sort of Christmassy sort of atmosphere about it.
Yeah.
And that just kind of worked. And we did these massive standees that were like 3D. Like you used to get these pop-up things like a theatre with all the seats in it and stuff. 3D.
Yeah.
So we did a full-size standee like that had all like the seats in it, and at the back you've got Toto on the. And there's a designer friend of mine, Nigel Winfield, who did a sort of painting of the poster as a new piece of artwork, which is absolutely beautiful as well. Which I've still got a quad poster for at home. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for sharing 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life, and thank you for sharing about your book. Film Marketing and Distribution, an Independent Filmmaker's Guide, available now from Creative Essentials. It just gives me to say thank you very much for joining us on the Britflix podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much.
Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks. And you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably. And in your review, tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Hey there, it's Hugh from Poderation here. If you like today's show, why not have a listen to The Ramble? Ridiculous, irreverent, and sometimes maybe just a little bit raunchy. The Ramble is what you get when you put 2 professionally funny people in a room together and give them license to talk about anything they want underneath the umbrella of nerdy hobbies. We think you'll love it, and if you want to check it out, go to our website at poderation.com.